Why did they think silence meant surrender? 3 enlisted men, 1 isolated hallway, 0 witnesses, and a woman they assumed was powerless. They didn't strike her, didn't shove her against the wall, they didn't need to. With a training blade, they sliced through her uniform shirt, slowly, methodically, not to injure, to degrade. 3 men crowding her space, 1 woman being treated like a plaything, and the quiet they interpreted as weakness. They labeled it correction, called it performance adjustment, but the reality was sexual assault in military dress. What they couldn't have known was that the woman they'd trapped was a Navy SEAL, an elite Tier 1 operative. And before that blade clattered to the concrete, all 3 were sprawled on their backs, weaponless, dazed, finished. But what happened in the next 60 seconds would make the entire installation go silent with shock. Yet to understand how she reached that moment, we need to go back, because this account doesn't begin in that hallway. It begins 14 days earlier, in a Pentagon basement office, with a man who'd invested 41 years discovering that the most brutal conflicts aren't always fought on foreign soil. The room was cramped, Pentagon subtle, windowless, fluorescent tubes buzzing like anxious insects, the type of space where military careers came to quiet endings, where bureaucratic files swallowed aspirations whole. Colonel Marcus Brennan sat behind a desk that had weathered better decades, his palms pressed flat against aged manila folders, his jaw clenched with the breed of fury that comes from possessing truth without adequate proof. 67 years old, silver hair cropped in military precision, eyes the shade of winter steel, keen enough to slice through rationalizations and deceptions with equal ruthlessness. They called him Granite, not for hardness alone, though he possessed that quality, but for immovability. Once Marcus Brennan planted his position, divine intervention itself couldn't shift him. The folders before him narrated a story he'd witnessed far too often. 7 official grievances over 18 months, 4 female Marines reassigned to separate installations, careers derailed, aspirations surrendered, 3 complaints retracted following what documentation termed peer counseling interventions. Bureaucratic language meaning intimidation, isolation, pressure applied until silence appeared safer than speaking. All approved by 1 individual. Major Vincent Marlowe, executive officer at the Joint Warfare Conditioning Facility in California, a man Granite had briefly served alongside in Somalia, 1993. Black Hawk Down, when ammunition flew and pandemonium reigned, Marlowe had been steady, reliable. But somewhere between Mogadishu and the present day, something had corrupted within him. Or perhaps it had always lurked there, merely awaiting the proper environment to flourish. Granite's phone vibrated, encrypted connection. He answered without greeting. "Hawkins." The voice on the opposite end was steady, controlled, the kind that could guide you through explosive ordnance disposal or notify you of your own mortality with identical composure. "Colonel, you called. I need you in California. Covert evaluation, joint facility, Marine and Navy cross-branch integration assessment." A pause. "What am I actually evaluating?" Granite smiled despite the gravity. This was precisely why he'd contacted her. Commander Juliet Hawkins didn't waste moments pretending the world was cleaner than reality. "Predators," he stated plainly. 3 Marines. Established pattern. I need confirmation they're still hunting. And if they are, I require evidence that'll withstand SOCOM scrutiny. The kind that doesn't get buried under he said she said and peer counseling sessions. Another pause, longer now. When Juliet spoke again, her voice carried weight. Granite recognized the weight of someone who'd once been powerless and vowed never to be again. "I'm assuming you want me as bait. I want you to be what you are, and when they bite, I want you to demonstrate what a Tier 1 operative looks like." Rules of engagement. Granite leaned back, The chair protested. Everything in this office groaned as if the structure itself was exhausted from harboring secrets. Observe until they cross the boundary. Document everything. And when they do cross it, because they will, you handle it your way. Just ensure sufficient witnesses that nobody can dismiss it as misunderstanding. Understood. When do I deploy? 48 hours. I'll have your cover credentials prepared. You'll enter as an anonymous integration officer. No visible rank, just a numbered armband. Low profile. Granite, her voice shifted, softer but equally certain. What's the real story here? He gazed down at the folders, at Staff Sergeant Diana Prescott's file, 28 years old, exemplary service record, forced medical discharge after 18 months of documented harassment that command had classified as interpersonal friction and adaptation challenges. She'd filed a formal grievance. It had been routed to Marlowe. 3 weeks later, she'd withdrawn it. 4 weeks after that, she was gone. Granite had attempted to reach her. 3 calls, 2 emails, she wouldn't respond. And he understood why. Because speaking up hadn't saved her. It had destroyed her career. The real story, Granite said quietly, is that I failed someone, a good Marine. She trusted the system. The system failed her, and the man who failed her remains positioned to fail others. Then we don't fail this time. No, we don't. He ended the call, sat in silence momentarily, then opened his desk's bottom drawer and extracted a photograph. Grenada, 1985. He was 27 then, lean, hungry, standing with his squad outside a compound they just cleared. The engagement had been brutal, close quarters, blade work, the kind of combat where hesitation meant death. He'd learned something in those Grenada tunnels that most men never grasped. That genuine strength wasn't about who could shout loudest or strike hardest. It was about who could remain composed when chaos erupted, who could move with precision when everyone else flailed, who could wait for the exact right moment and then strike with absolute certainty. He'd tried teaching that lesson for 41 years, to hundreds of Marines, thousands of recruits. Most learned it, some didn't. And a dangerous few learned it and twisted it into something malignant. They learned patience not for honor, but for predation. They learned precision not for protection, but for targeting the vulnerable. Men like Corporal Tyler Nash, like Lance Corporal Jackson Reed, like Private First Class Austin Cross. Granite secured the photograph, locked the drawer. Then he made one final call to Admiral Harrison Mitchell, commander of the California facility. Harrison, it's Granite. I'm sending an evaluation officer. She'll arrive Monday. Anonymous integration assessment. Brennan, what's this really about? It's about ensuring the Marines under your command understand the difference between discipline and predation. Mitchell's voice tightened. If you're suggesting. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm informing you that you have a problem. I'm sending someone who can identify it. After that, what you do with the information is your decision. But if you ignore it and something occurs, SOCOM won't contact me. They'll contact you. Silence on the other end. Then understood. Granite ended the call, leaned back, closed his eyes. 41 years, Grenada, Panama, Desert Storm, Somalia, Fallujah, Afghanistan. He'd witnessed combat in 7 nations, trained personnel in twice that many, earned more commendations than he could recall, and carried more scars than appeared on any medical record. But the failures haunted him more than the victories. Diana Prescott haunted him. Because she'd done everything right, reported through proper channels, trusted the system, and the system had chewed her up and spit her out. Now she was gone, and 3 predators remained. Not anymore. This time the system wouldn't fail. This time justice would be precise. What does it feel like to walk into a place knowing you're the bait? Commander Juliet Hawkins arrived at the Joint Warfare Conditioning Facility on a Monday morning that felt like any other. Cloudless California sky, Marine recruits running drills, the rhythmic cadence of formation chants echoing across asphalt. She wore civilian workout gear, no rank insignia, just a numbered armband, Integration Officer 47. Anonymous, forgettable, invisible. Exactly as planned. The facility sprawled across 200 acres, training grounds, obstacle courses, combat simulation buildings, a place designed to forge warriors, but like any forge it could also burn. Juliet checked in at administration, received her temporary credentials, a brief orientation from a staff sergeant who barely looked at her. Integration officers observe cross-branch training exercises. You'll rotate through different units, document cohesion metrics, standard evaluation protocol. Standard routine, nothing to see here. But Juliet wasn't here for cohesion metrics. She was here because 7 women had been silenced, because one old warrior refused to let predators win, because sometimes the only way to expose rot was to let it reveal itself. And she knew it would. Predators always revealed themselves. They couldn't help it. The hunt was in their nature. All she had to do was wait. She started in the weight training facility. Early morning session, mostly Marines, a few Navy personnel. She positioned herself near the free weights, began a routine, blended in. Nobody noticed her. Good. She observed, listened, cataloged. The facility had a rhythm, a culture, unspoken hierarchies, the way senior enlisted moved, the way junior personnel deferred, the dynamics between branches. And then she noticed them. 3 Marines, always together, moving as a unit, Corporal Tyler Nash, Lance Corporal Jackson Reed, Private First Class Austin Cross. They didn't do anything overt, not yet, but Juliet recognized the pattern. The way they watched, the way their attention lingered on female personnel, the way they exchanged glances, small smirks, private jokes. The way they created space, isolated, corralled. It was subtle, practiced, the behavior of men who'd done this before and gotten away with it. Juliet continued her workout, noted their positions, their routine. Nash was the leader, older, more experienced, the one who set the tone. Reed was the enforcer, bigger, physical, the one who made others uncomfortable. Cross was the follower, younger, eager, the one trying to prove himself. A pack. And they were hunting. Over the next 3 days, Juliet rotated through different training areas. Combat simulations, tactical exercises, conditioning drills, always observing, always documenting. She noticed how Nash, Reed, and Cross positioned themselves, how they inserted themselves into spaces where female personnel trained, how they offered unsolicited advice, invaded personal space, made comments that skirted the line between professional and inappropriate. Nothing overtly actionable, not yet. But the pattern was clear. They were testing, probing, searching for vulnerability. And then Juliet noticed something else. The way other personnel reacted, the way female Marines would shift their routines to avoid certain areas, the way conversations would stop when Nash and his crew approached, the way eyes would drop, shoulders would tense. Fear. Not of combat, not of training, but of the men who were supposed to be their brothers in arms. On day 4, Juliet made herself visible. She joined a tactical combat simulation, mixed unit, Marines and Navy, close quarters scenarios, live fire exercises with training ammunition. Nash, Reed, and Cross were there. During a break, Nash approached. Integration Officer Wright. Juliet nodded, didn't smile, kept her expression neutral. "How's the evaluation going?" he asked. His tone was friendly, professional, but his eyes were calculating. "Standard observations," Juliet replied. Cohesion appears adequate. Nash smiled. Just adequate. We work pretty hard to maintain unit integrity. I document what I see. Well, if you need any specific insights, let me know. Been here 18 months. Know the place inside and out. Noted. He lingered for a moment, studying her, then walked away. Juliet understood what had just happened. She'd been marked. The hunt had begun. That night, she filed her first encrypted report to Granite. Pattern confirmed. 3 subjects identified. Behavior consistent with documented grievances. Establishing contact. Proceeding to next phase. Granite's response came within minutes. Understood, document everything, stay safe. And Juliet, when the moment comes, make it count. She would. Because she'd been that 19-year-old girl once. The one who'd been targeted. The one who'd been told her truth didn't matter. She'd survived, fought back, became an operator. Not every woman got that chance. Diana Prescott hadn't. But Juliet would make sure these predators never got another victim. Over the next week, the pressure increased. Nash and his crew began appearing wherever Juliet trained, offering advice she didn't need, making comments about form, about technique, about how Navy personnel could learn from Marine methods. Always professional, always just inside the boundaries. But the intent was clear. They were closing in. Juliet documented everything: timestamps, locations, witnesses present, the slow, methodical construction of a pattern that couldn't be dismissed as misunderstanding. She also noticed something else. There was another woman, a Marine, Lance Corporal Meredith Foster, 22 years old, relatively new to the facility. And Nash's crew was circling her too. Juliet watched as they isolated Foster during training exercises, how they corralled her into spaces with fewer witnesses, how they tested her boundaries. Foster was handling it, for now, keeping her composure, maintaining professionalism. But Juliet recognized the tension in her shoulders, the way her jaw clenched, the way her eyes scanned for exits. She'd seen that look before. In a mirror 20 years ago. On day 10, things escalated. Juliet was leaving the conditioning facility. Late evening. Most personnel had cleared out. The hallways were quiet. She turned a corner. And there they were. Nash Reed Cross. Blocking the corridor. It wasn't accidental. Working late, integration officer, Nash asked. His tone was casual, but his positioning wasn't. They'd formed a semicircle, cutting off her forward path, forcing her to retreat or engage. Classic predator tactics. Juliet stopped, assessed the situation. 3 men, 1 hallway, no witnesses. This was it. But not yet. She needed them to cross the line, needed undeniable evidence. Just finishing evaluations, she replied evenly. Reed stepped closer. You evaluate pretty thoroughly. Noticed you've been watching us specifically. I observe all personnel. Cross laughed. Seems like you observe some more than others. Juliet remained still, controlled, waiting. Nash moved forward. Maybe you need a more hands-on evaluation. Really understand how we operate. There it was. The boundary. But Juliet needed more. Needed action, not just words. I'll include your input in my report, she said, and moved to step around them. Reed blocked her path. Physical obstruction. Escalation. Not so fast, he said. We're having a conversation. Juliet's heart rate remained steady, her breathing controlled. She was assessing distances, calculating angles, preparing. But she still needed them to make the move. To give her justification. Conversation's over, she stated clearly. Move aside. Nash smiled. Or what? The question hung in the air. And then Reed reached out, grabbed her arm. Contact. But Juliet didn't react, not yet. She needed the knife. Because words could be denied, physical contact could be explained away. But a blade cutting through a uniform couldn't be misinterpreted. "Let go," she said calmly. Reed tightened his grip. "Make me." Nash pulled out a training blade, polymer construction, regulation equipment, completely legal to carry. But the way he held it wasn't about training. He stepped forward. "You know what I think. I think you need an attitude adjustment." He pressed the blade against her uniform shirt, not her skin, just the fabric. And then he began to cut. Slowly, methodically. Not to injure. To degrade. To humiliate. To demonstrate power. 3 men, 1 woman, 1 blade, and the silence they interpreted as surrender. But Juliet wasn't silent because she was afraid. She was silent because she was waiting. For the exact right moment. For the witnesses. For justice. And as that blade sliced through her shirt, as Reed held her arm, as Cross watched with that eager anticipation, everything changed. How fast can 3 men fall? The blade was still moving, slow, deliberate, Nash savoring every second of what he thought was dominance. Reed's grip on Juliet's arm was tight, confident, the grip of someone who'd done this before. Cross stood watch, blocking the hallway's other end, making sure no one interrupted. They had her cornered, outnumbered, trapped. Or so they thought. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't have known, was that the woman they'd cornered wasn't just a Navy officer. She was a Tier 1 operator. A Navy SEAL. And for the past 10 days, she'd been documenting every move they made, every boundary they crossed, every predatory pattern they revealed. Now they'd given her exactly what she needed. Undeniable evidence, physical assault, a training blade used as a weapon of humiliation. And 3 witnesses who were about to become victims of their own tactics. Juliet's mind went cold, tactical, the way it always did when violence became necessary. She'd analyzed their positions, their stances, their vulnerabilities. Reed was holding her left arm, overconfident, too much pressure, his balance shifted forward. Nash was focused on the blade, on the cutting, on the psychological theater of degradation, not on defense. Cross was behind them, watching, not engaged, the weakest link. 3 seconds. That's all she needed. Juliet moved. Not explosively, not with theatrical flourish, but with the precise, controlled violence of someone who'd spent 20 years perfecting close-quarters combat. Her right hand came up, fast, caught Reed's wrist, not where he was gripping her arm, where he was vulnerable, the pressure point at the base of his thumb. She twisted, hard, clinical. Reed's grip released instantly, pain overriding control. Juliet stepped into him, used his forward momentum against him. Her shoulder drove into his solar plexus as her leg swept behind his knee. Reed went down, hard, the kind of fall that knocks the air from your lungs and leaves you gasping. 1 second. Nash reacted, training kicked in, he brought the blade up, defensive. But Juliet was already moving. She pivoted, her left hand deflected the blade outward, away from both of them. Her right hand struck Nash's elbow, the joint hyperextended. The blade clattered to the concrete. Nash's eyes widened, realization hitting. This wasn't the victim they'd expected. Juliet didn't give him time to process. Her knee drove into his midsection, precise, controlled, enough to fold him but not injure permanently. As he doubled over, her elbow came down between his shoulder blades. Nash hit the floor face first. 2 seconds. Cross finally moved, his training, what little he had told him to engage. But hesitation had cost him the initiative. Juliet turned, read his body language, saw the telegraphed punch coming before he'd fully committed to it. She sidestepped, Minimal movement, maximum efficiency. Cross's momentum carried him forward, off balance. Juliet's hand caught the back of his neck, guided him downward, used his own force to drive him into the wall. Not hard enough to cause serious injury, hard enough to end the fight. Cross slumped, dazed. 3 seconds. 3 men sprawled on the floor, weaponless, finished. And Juliet stood over them, breathing steady, heart rate barely elevated, not a single mark on her. Professional, controlled, precise. The hallway was silent. And then doors opened. Because Juliet hadn't chosen this hallway randomly. She'd positioned herself here, at this time, for a reason. Security cameras covered this corridor. She'd verified their positions, their angles, made sure every second would be recorded. And the doors that were opening, those weren't random either. Admiral Mitchell's office was 30 feet away, along with 2 other senior officers who'd been briefed by Granite to remain on site, to respond when called. Juliet's encrypted phone had sent an automated alert the moment Reed made physical contact, the moment the line was crossed. Witnesses, multiple, senior command with video evidence. No he said, she said, no dismissals, no buried reports. Just undeniable, documented, witnessed assault. And 3 predators who'd finally been caught. Admiral Mitchell came down the hallway first, 2 captains behind him. They stopped, took in the scene. 3 Marines on the floor, 1 Navy officer standing, uniform shirt cut open but otherwise unharmed, a training blade on the ground. Mitchell's face hardened. "Commander Hawkins," he said quietly, "are you injured?" "No, sir, I'm fine." "What happened here?" Juliet's voice was steady, professional, the tone of someone giving a tactical debrief. "These 3 Marines attempted to sexually assault me, sir. They cornered me in this corridor, made physical contact without consent. One of them used a training blade to cut my uniform in an act of intimidation and degradation. I defended myself using minimal necessary force. All actions are documented on facility security cameras. I have 10 days of additional documentation regarding their pattern of behavior. And I have encrypted communications with Colonel Marcus Brennan, detailing the mission parameters that brought me to this facility." Mitchell's jaw clenched. "Mission parameters?" "Yes, sir. I'm here on Colonel Brennan's orders. Covert evaluation. My objective was to identify and document predatory behavior patterns among facility personnel. These 3 subjects matched the profile. I established observation protocols, documented their tactics, and waited for them to cross the legal threshold that would justify action." She paused. "They crossed it. I took action. Mission complete." The 2 captains were already on their phones, calling security, medical, JAG officers. Mitchell looked down at Nash, Reed, and Cross. They were starting to recover, groaning, trying to stand. "Stay down," Mitchell ordered. His voice carried the weight of 30 years of command. "Don't move, don't speak. You're under arrest pending investigation." Nash tried to protest. "Sir, this is a misunderstanding." "I said don't speak." Mitchell's voice could have cut steel. "You assaulted a superior officer, on camera, with witnesses. There's no misunderstanding here. There's only consequences." Security arrived. MPs. They secured Nash, Reed, and Cross, cuffed them, read them their rights. The 3 men who'd spent months terrorizing female personnel were being led away, under guard, facing courts-martial. And Juliet watched them go. No satisfaction, no triumph, just the cold certainty of a mission executed precisely. Mitchell turned to her. "You could have identified yourself, could have stopped this before it got physical." "With respect, sir, that's exactly what every other victim tried. They reported through channels, filed complaints, trusted the system. And the system failed them because words can be denied, reports can be buried, but this," she gestured to the security cameras, to the cut uniform, to the training blade on the floor, This can't be dismissed. This forces action. This ensures justice. Mitchell was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded. Colonel Brennan chose well, unconventional approach, but effective. The colonel understands that sometimes conventional approaches fail, sir, especially when predators learn to work within the system's blind spots. How many others? Mitchell asked. How many victims are we talking about? Juliet pulled out her tablet, pulled up her documentation. 7 confirmed cases over 18 months, 4 additional suspected cases, all routed through Major Vincent Marlowe's office, all resulting in either retracted complaints or reassignments that ended careers. Mitchell's expression darkened. Marlowe's been protecting them. The evidence suggests collaboration, sir. Whether active or passive, the result is the same. Predators were enabled. Victims were silenced. The pattern continued. Not anymore. No, sir, not anymore. Medical arrived, checked Juliet for injuries, found none, photographed the cut uniform, documented everything. JAG officers arrived, began interviews, started the investigation process. And through it all, Juliet remained calm, professional, providing facts, evidence, documentation. The system that had failed 7 women was now being forced to work. Because sometimes justice didn't come from trusting the system. It came from forcing the system to function. Later that night, Juliet called Granite. Mission complete, she reported. 3 subjects in custody, video evidence secured, 7 prior cases identified, Major Marlowe implicated, full investigation initiated. Granite's voice carried something she rarely heard from him: relief. Good work, Juliet. Diana Prescott's case. Included in the evidence, along with her formal complaint and documentation of how it was mishandled. She'll be contacted, given the opportunity to participate in the investigation if she chooses. She might not want to relive it. I know, but she deserves the choice, deserves to know that what happened to her mattered, that it led to change. Silence on the line. Then Granite spoke quietly. You did what I couldn't. 27 years I've carried the failure of not stopping men like this. You stopped them. No, sir. We stopped them. You gave me the mission, the authority, the trust. I just executed. That's what makes you Tier 1, Juliet. Not the skill, the precision, the understanding that some missions aren't about enemy combatants. They're about protecting our own, from our own. Lessons learned from a good teacher, sir. Learn one more lesson then. This won't be the last time you face predators. They exist at every level, every unit, every command. And the system will always have blind spots, always have ways for them to hide. So you keep doing what you did here. You document, you wait. And when they cross the line, you make damn sure there's no ambiguity, no dismissal, just consequences. Understood, sir. And Juliet, when this is over, when the investigations are complete and the courts-martial are done, I want you to do something for me. Sir, I want you to find Diana Prescott, face to face, and I want you to tell her that her complaint mattered, that she wasn't wrong, that the system failed her but it won't fail the next woman. Can you do that? Juliet felt something tighten in her chest. Yes, sir, I can do that. Good, because she needs to hear it, from someone who understands, from someone who made sure her suffering wasn't meaningless. The call ended, and Juliet sat in her temporary quarters, staring at the wall, thinking about 19-year-old girls who got targeted, about systems that failed them, about the thin line between being a victim and becoming an operator. She'd walked that line once. Diana Prescott hadn't had that chance. But maybe now, justice would give her something else. Closure. Vindication. The knowledge that speaking up, even when it destroyed her career, had eventually led to this moment. To 3 predators in custody. To a system forced to confront its failures. To change. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak loudly. Sometimes it endures, documents, waits, and then it acts with precision that leaves no room for doubt. What does vindication feel like after 27 years? The investigation moved fast. Once video evidence surfaced, once Juliet's documentation was entered into the record, once the pattern became undeniable, the military justice system had no choice but to act. Within 48 hours, Nash, Reed, and Cross were formally charged. Assault, sexual harassment, conduct unbecoming. The list grew as more evidence emerged. Within a week, Major Vincent Marlowe was relieved of duty, pending his own investigation into how he'd systematically buried complaints, mishandled grievances, and enabled predatory behavior for 18 months. Within 2 weeks, 7 women were contacted, given the opportunity to participate in the investigation, to have their voices heard, their truth validated. Not all of them responded. Some had moved on, built new lives, didn't want to relive the trauma. But 3 did, including Diana Prescott. Juliet received the notification on day 16. Prescott had agreed to a face-to-face meeting, requested that Juliet be present. They met in a small conference room at Camp Pendleton, neutral ground, private. Diana Prescott was smaller than Juliet expected, 5'4", maybe 120, dark hair pulled back, eyes that had seen too much for 28 years. She sat across the table, hands folded, posture rigid. Juliet sat down, waited. Prescott spoke first. Her voice was quiet but steady. "They told me you were the one who documented everything, who got them arrested." "Yes." "And that you did it because Colonel Brennan asked you to." "Yes." Prescott's jaw tightened. "Why?" "Because your complaint mattered, because you deserved justice, because the system failed you and Colonel Brennan refused to let that failure stand. I withdrew my complaint." "I know." "I gave up." "No," Juliet's voice was firm. "You survived, there's a difference." Prescott's eyes glistened. She blinked hard, fought it back. "I trusted the system, filed through proper channels, did everything by the book, and it destroyed my career." "I know. So why would I trust it now?" Juliet leaned forward. "Because this time the evidence is undeniable. This time there are witnesses, video, documentation. This time they can't bury it." "They buried mine." "They did, and that was wrong. And the officer who buried it is now facing his own charges. But what happened to you, what they did to you, it led to this. Your complaint, even though it was retracted, it was part of the pattern. Part of the evidence that showed Nash, Reed, and Cross had been doing this for months, years. Your truth mattered, Diana, even when it felt like it didn't." Prescott's hands trembled. "I wanted to be a Marine. That's all I ever wanted, and they took it from me." "They tried, but you're still here, still standing. That's not defeat, that's resilience." "It doesn't feel like resilience. It feels like failure." Juliet understood that feeling, the weight of it, the way it could crush you if you let it. "I was 19, Juliet said quietly. Navy recruit, got targeted by a senior officer. He cornered me, assaulted me, told me if I reported it, my career was over before it started." Prescott looked up, surprise in her eyes. "I didn't report it," Juliet continued. "I carried it for years, buried it, let it eat at me. But I also decided that I'd never be powerless again. I trained, fought, became a SEAL, became the kind of operator who could protect others, who could stop predators." "Did you ever get justice?" "Not for what happened to me. No. The officer who assaulted me retired before I had the rank or authority to do anything about it. But I got something else." "What?" "I got the ability to make sure it didn't happen to others. To use my skills, my training, my position to stop men like him, like Nash, like Reed, like Cross. That's not the same as personal justice, but it's something." Prescott was quiet for a long moment. Then you used yourself as bait. Yes. You let them think you were vulnerable, let them hunt you so you could catch them. Yes. That's dangerous. It was necessary. What if something had gone wrong? Juliet smiled slightly. I'm a Tier 1 operator, Diana. I've executed missions in 14 countries. I've engaged enemy combatants in close quarters. I've survived situations that would break most people. 3 Marines in a hallway. That wasn't danger. That was opportunity. Opportunity for what? To give you justice. To give all 7 of you justice. To make sure your truth wasn't silenced forever. Prescott's eyes filled with tears. This time she didn't fight them. I thought it was my fault, she whispered. I thought I did something wrong, something that made them target me. You didn't. I thought if I'd been stronger, tougher, more capable. Diana, Juliet's voice was gentle but firm. Listen to me. What happened to you was not your fault. Predators don't target weakness, they target vulnerability. And they create that vulnerability through isolation, intimidation, manipulation. You did nothing wrong. You trusted your chain of command. You followed protocol. You did everything a good Marine should do. The system failed you, not the other way around. The tears came harder now. Prescott covered her face with her hands. And Juliet let her cry. Let her release years of buried pain, shame, guilt. Because sometimes that's what justice looks like. Not courtrooms, not sentences, not public vindication. Sometimes justice is just being heard, being believed, being told that your truth mattered. After a while, Prescott looked up, wiped her eyes. What happens now? Now you decide. You can participate in the investigation, give testimony, help build the case, or you can step away, live your life, let the system handle it. Either choice is valid, either choice is yours. What would you do? Juliet considered the question. I'd participate, not because I wanted revenge, but because I'd want to make sure my voice was part of the record, part of the pattern, part of the evidence that ensures this never happens again. But that's me. You're not me. You get to choose your own path. Prescott nodded slowly. I'll participate, I'll testify, I'll give them everything. You're sure? I'm sure because you're right. My truth does matter. And maybe if I speak it now, someone else won't have to go through what I went through. Juliet reached across the table, offered her hand. Prescott took it. 2 women, 2 different journeys, one shared understanding. That predators could be stopped, that systems could be forced to function, that justice, when delivered precisely, could change everything. The investigation continued for another 3 weeks. Nash, Reed, and Cross were court-martialed, found guilty on multiple charges, dishonorable discharges, prison sentences, permanent records that would follow them forever. Major Vincent Marlowe faced his own trial, conspiracy, dereliction of duty, obstruction of justice. He lost his pension, his rank, everything. But more importantly, the facility implemented new protocols. Anonymous reporting systems, third-party investigators for harassment complaints, mandatory training on predatory behavior patterns, regular command climate surveys. Changes that wouldn't have happened without evidence, without documentation, without one operator willing to walk into danger to expose the truth. Admiral Mitchell called Juliet into his office on her final day at the facility. Commander Hawkins, he said, I owe you an apology. Sir, when Colonel Brennan told me he was sending an evaluation officer, I thought he was overreacting, thought he was seeing problems that didn't exist. I was wrong. The problems were real, and they were under my command. That's on me. With respect, sir, predators are skilled at hiding, at working within blind spots. You couldn't have known without evidence. That's the point. I should have been looking for evidence, should have been more vigilant, should have created an environment where these complaints didn't get buried. You're creating that environment now, sir. The new protocols you've implemented, they'll make a difference. Mitchell nodded. Because of you, because of what you documented, what you exposed. Because 7 women trusted the system enough to file complaints, sir, even when it failed them, even when it cost them their careers. They created the pattern. I just made it visible. Mitchell extended his hand. Thank you, Commander, for your service, for your courage, for doing what needed to be done. Juliet shook his hand. Just following orders, sir, and trying to live up to the lessons I was taught. She left California the next morning. But before she did, she made one more stop. Diana Prescott's apartment, small place, quiet neighborhood. Prescott answered the door, looked surprised. Commander, can I come in? They sat in Prescott's living room, coffee on the table between them. I wanted to tell you something, Juliet said. Colonel Brennan asked me to deliver a message. He wanted you to know that your complaint mattered, that you weren't wrong, that the system failed you, but it won't fail the next woman because of what you did. Prescott's eyes welled up again. He remembered me. He never forgot you. He carried the failure of not being able to help you for years. This mission, everything we did, it was because he refused to let what happened to you happen to anyone else. I don't know what to say. Juliet reached into her bag, pulled out an envelope. This is from the Marine Corps, an official letter. It restores your honorable discharge status, acknowledges that your separation was unjust, offers reinstatement if you want it, and includes back pay for the time you lost. Prescott took the envelope with shaking hands, opened it, read it. They're apologizing. They're acknowledging the truth, that you were wronged, that the system failed you, and that you deserve restitution. Will you come back? Prescott was quiet for a long time. Then she shook her head. No, I don't think so. That part of my life is over. I've moved on, built something new. That's okay. The offer stands. You can decide later or never. The choice is yours. Thank you for everything, for believing me, for making sure my truth wasn't buried forever. Your truth was always real, Diana. It just took time for the system to acknowledge it. They talked for another hour, about life, about healing, about moving forward. And when Juliet left, she felt something she hadn't expected. Peace. Not because justice was perfect, not because the pain was erased, but because one woman who'd been silenced finally had her voice heard. And 7 others did too. Sometimes that's all justice can offer. A voice, a choice, a chance to move forward knowing your truth mattered. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. How do you measure a legacy built over 41 years? Colonel Marcus Brennan sat in his Pentagon office one last time. The same cramped space, the same buzzing fluorescent lights, the same worn desk. But something was different now. The folders that had haunted him, Diana Prescott's case, the 7 buried complaints, the pattern of predation, they were closed now. Justice delivered. System reformed. Mission complete. His phone rang, encrypted line. Brennan. Granite, it's Mitchell. Wanted to give you the final update. I'm listening. Courts-martial complete. All 3 convicted, dishonorable discharges, prison time. Marlowe's trial wrapped yesterday. Guilty on all counts. He's done. And the women. 3 participated in testimony. 4 declined but received official acknowledgments and restitution. All 7 have been contacted. All 7 know what happened to them mattered. Brennan closed his eyes. Diana Prescott. Commander Hawkins met with her personally, delivered your message, delivered the official letter. Prescott chose not to return to service, but she has her honorable discharge restored. She has closure. That's all I wanted. Granted, what you started here, what Commander Hawkins executed, it changed this facility. New protocols across the entire Joint Command structure. Anonymous reporting. third-party investigations. This is going to save careers, lives. It should have happened 27 years ago. But it's happening now, because you refuse to let it go, because you found the right operator for the mission. That's leadership, Granite, that's legacy. The call ended. Brennan sat in silence. 41 years, Grenada, Panama, Desert Storm, Somalia, Fallujah, Afghanistan. He'd trained thousands, led hundreds, executed more missions than he could count. But this one, this quiet, covert operation in a California training facility, this one mattered most. Because it wasn't about enemy combatants. It wasn't about foreign soil. It wasn't about medals or commendations. It was about protecting Marines from their own, about fixing a system that had failed, about making sure one woman's suffering led to change that would protect countless others. That was legacy. Not what you accomplished, who you protected, who you trained, who carried your lessons forward. His phone buzzed again, this time a text from Juliet. Mission complete, justice delivered, Diana has closure, 7 women vindicated, system reformed, couldn't have done it without your trust. Thank you, Granite. He smiled. Typed back, you did what I couldn't, that's not my failure, that's my success. You took the lessons and used them perfectly, that's all a teacher can ask. 3 months later, Colonel Marcus Brennan retired. Formal ceremony, Naval Yard, Admiral Mitchell presiding, General Chen present, 100 personnel assembled. Granite stood in service dress blues. 67 years compressed into ribbons and medals and citations that couldn't capture what 41 years actually meant. The speeches were standard, honorable service, dedication, sacrifice. But when Granite spoke, he went a different direction. 41 years, he said. Grenada to Afghanistan, I've trained thousands, led hundreds, executed more operations than I can count, and people ask what I'm most proud of. They expect me to talk about combat, about missions, about citations. He paused. But the truth is simpler. I'm most proud of the people I trained who became better than I was, who took lessons and improved them, who used knowledge for protection rather than domination. That's legacy. Not what you did, who you taught, and whether they carried lessons forward properly. He looked directly at Juliet, standing in the front row. Commander Hawkins represents everything I tried to teach: patience, precision, justice delivered without waste. She took those lessons and executed a mission I couldn't complete 27 years ago. She did what I failed to do, and that's not my failure redeemed. It's my success realized, because I trained someone who could finish what I couldn't. That's what matters. After the ceremony, private moment, Granite presented Juliet with a blade. Kabar knife, but not Desert Storm era. Grenada 1985, his personal blade, the one he'd carried through tunnels and chaos, in moments where precision meant survival. General Chen sent you her Desert Storm blade, he said. This is older, more worn, but more important, because this is the knife that taught me the lessons I passed to you, about patience, about waiting for the exact right moment, about striking with certainty. It saved my life 6 times in Grenada. Now it's yours, use it well. Juliet took the blade, felt the weight, the history, legacy compressed into steel and leather, and a grip worn smooth by 41 years of service. I'll honor it. I know you will, that's why I'm giving it, not because you need a weapon, because you've earned a symbol, carry it. Remember what it represents. Real warriors protect. Real operators eliminate threats. Real justice is precise. And real legacy is passing knowledge to people who will use it properly. 6 months later, Juliet was training new female SEAL candidates at Coronado. Using Granite's methods, patience, precision, control. Teaching them that silence wasn't weakness. That restraint was a weapon. That real strength protected rather than dominated. Meredith Foster enrolled in the program. The lance corporal from California who'd been circled by Nash's crew, who'd witnessed the aftermath in that hallway. Full circle, witness becoming operator, observation transformed to capability. She struggled, fell, got back up, kept pushing. And Juliet saw in her the same determination she'd carried at 19, the same refusal to let being targeted become being defeated. During knife training, Juliet demonstrated techniques, close quarters, precision striking, using minimum force for maximum effect. She carried Granite's grenade blade, showed it to candidates. 41 years, she said. This blade survived Grenada tunnels, carried by a man who taught me everything I know about being an operator. He gave it to me not because I needed a weapon, because I'd earned a legacy. Someday, if you earn it, you'll carry something like this, not the blade itself, the lessons it represents, that real warriors protect, that real strength is precise, that real justice is certain. She paused. Remember that. Her encrypted phone buzzed. Message from Granite, now officially retired, consulting for SOCOM, still teaching, still passing knowledge. Camp Pendleton situation resolved, 3 incidents investigated, pattern identified, 2 officers discharged, protocols implemented, your methods worked, cultural change spreading, legacy multiplying. Juliet smiled, looked at the candidates struggling through the obstacle course, saw Meredith leading the pace, saw others following. Saw the future being built by people who'd learned that being targeted didn't mean being defeated, that systems could change, that justice properly delivered reshaped culture. She thought about that corridor. For days, knife-cutting shirt, 3 seconds of controlled violence that ended careers and began transformation. About Diana Prescott restored, about Meredith Foster becoming an operator, about 7 victims given justice, about institutional rot being exposed and eliminated, about 1 mission that proved Tier 1 operators didn't just complete assignments, they changed structures, reshaped environments, created conditions where predators got stopped and victims got heard and justice actually happened. That was legacy. Not citations, not medals, not ribbons. The people you trained, the systems you changed, the culture you reshaped, the justice you delivered so precisely that it became a template for others to follow. Juliet touched the grenade blade on her belt, felt the weight, the history. 41 years compressed into steel. And she understood something fundamental. Granite hadn't given her a weapon. He'd given her responsibility, to carry lessons forward, to train others properly, to ensure that knowledge paid for in blood across Grenada tunnels and desert storm sand and Somalia streets and Fallujah firefights got used to protect rather than prey, to eliminate threats rather than create them, to deliver justice rather than dismiss it. That responsibility weighed more than the blade. But she'd carry both. For Granite, for Prescott, for Meredith, for 7 victims and 15 more across 27 years, and all the others who'd been dismissed and silenced and told their truth didn't matter. Their truth mattered now. Because 1 operator had been patient enough to document it, precise enough to prove it, certain enough to execute justice, and committed enough to ensure the system that had failed them got reshaped into a system that protected them. That was Tier 1 impact. That was legacy. That was what happened when silence stopped being weakness and became weapon, when restraint stopped being passivity and became strategy, when justice stopped being abstract concept and became 3 seconds of controlled violence that ended predation and began transformation. Commander Juliet Hawkins stood watching her candidates, carrying Granite's blade, teaching his lessons, building his legacy. And somewhere in the California desert, an old warrior smiled. Because 41 years hadn't been wasted. Knowledge had been passed, lessons had been learned, and the person carrying them forward was doing it perfectly. One operator, one mission, one knife at a time. Justice delivered, culture changed, legacy secured. The silence had ended, the reckoning was complete, and the transformation had just begun. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts.